But let's get into the Week 8 juicy juice. The good stuff.
The good stuff.
We're going to start out with our trade segment. Here, players you should buy, players you should try to unload a little bit. Now, these aren't always, buy lows. Sometimes they're just, okay, go out and get this guy regardless of the price.
Cost, yeah.
Yeah. We've pumped up Mike Evans so much, we're not going to continue to do that. I think the time has passed. I don't think anyone's giving up Mike Evans anymore.
No, at this point, he's pretty much untouchable. I'd be surprised.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with Mike Evans is he basically leads the league in targets, and he has a bye week on his resume.
Yeah.
He's right up there with, the elite wide receivers who have had a full slate of games, and Mike Evans has already gone through his bye, so that makes him even more valuable. So we're not going to talk about Mike Evans anymore. We're going to talk about some other elite wide receivers, though, quote-unquote elite wide receivers in the buy segment. Now, these are more buy lows, actually, because of their performance year-to-date. The first name I want to toss out there
we go.
In the buys, one Alshon Jeffery of the Chicago Bears. The Bears.
Oh, the Bears.
Bears. Yeah, Alshon.
I'm with you on this. I already bought him in a league, and then it didn't work out last week. But now the hope is that Cutler's coming back, and this is the quarterback he had success with in the previous years.
Jay
Cutler. It's a bad matchup this week with Minnesota. You don't love that. But now feels like the time to buy because matchup doesn't always dictate performance. It doesn't matter that this is a bad matchup. If you decide to get cute and like, oh no, I'm going to wait through Minnesota, he's going to have another bad week, and then I'll, during his bye, he might get dropped or I can get him for super cheap. Yeah, that could happen. Or, Alshon gets force-fed by Cutler, and even if the Bears lose horribly, he still sees, 20 targets and, has a nice game, and then Alshon's back and it's too late.
Alshon's back. No. Okay.
And after his bye, the schedule softens up a bit. It's pretty good.
It's pretty juicy, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. Tampa Bay, Giants, Tennessee, 49ers, Lions, Packers. It's good. The only one you don't like is the championship week when he sees Redskins with Norman. But still, that's 6 good weeks in a row before that. So this feels like
setting you up.
Yeah. We like to recommend buying and selling a week early. So that's what we're doing with Alshon.
With Alshon, yeah. And like you said, Jay Cutler's back. And Jay Cutler loves Alshon Jeffery, and he typically force feeds him anyway. As soon as Jay Cutler went down, and remember that Jay Cutler went down early in the Week 2 game against Philadelphia.
Yeah.
In Week 1, Alshon had over 100 yards. His only 100-yard performance of the season. And if you look at the 2 games that Cutler did play in, albeit the second one, he played like half the game.
Yeah.
You look at Alshon's yards per target, and it's over 15. Okay? When Hoyer was the quarterback, his yards per target hovered around 7. So it pretty much doubles when Cutler is in at quarterback. He pushes the ball down the field with Alshon a little bit more. And we've seen the narrative before with the second-string quarterback coming in and then finding rapport with the second and third-string wide receivers that they practice with weekly. I mean, going back to, Mark Sanchez and Jordan Matthews years ago. Cam Meredith was the guy for Hoyer. Hoyer was very comfortable throwing the ball to Cameron Meredith. Hoyer's not playing anymore. This makes Meredith basically expendable, and it's going to be the Alshon show in Chicago. We've seen it before. The argument that Chicago is a bad team doesn't really make a difference when you're talking about quarterback, wide receiver. Game script will probably favor Alshon and Cutler for the rest of the season because they're a mediocre team. I think their defense is underrated, so they might not get completely blown out, but I don't think they're going to be way ahead in any of these games where Alshon will be game scripted out. And their running back situation is kind of a mess right now. You have Fat Jerry Langford supposedly coming back soon.
Probably
you have
fatter.
Jordan Howard and Kadeem Carey. So it's just going to be a committee, essentially, in Chicago. And really, it's been an ineffective committee. Outside of the 2 games from Jordan Howard where he went ham, they haven't really been getting a lot from the running back position. So if they want to succeed, it's going to be through Alshon Jeffery. So go out and snatch him up.
Snatch him up. Yeah, and to sort of throw some numbers at what my point was about him playing Minnesota, a little split I just looked up right now while you were saying who knows what. Alshon, when he plays non-top 10 pass defenses, so like 11 through 32, he averages 15 PPR points a game. When playing a top 10 pass defense, it's 14. So there really isn't a difference. He's basically just as good regardless of matchup. Because he just gets force-fed. It doesn't really, the efficiency drops, but you don't care about that. You just care about is the stat line there.
Yeah, garbage time Alshon, baby.
Garbage time. As for something to sell for him, a 1-to-1 like running back for wide receiver that I think is kind of perfect would be like Jeremy Hill for Alshon. Jeremy Hill coming off the big week. If they're running back desperate, I would do that.
Yeah.
And Alshon is also, the owner is probably so fed up at this point. They're probably like, wish they could drop him if his name wasn't Alshon Jeffery. So you could probably offer even less and get him.
I mean, if you look at his numbers, he hasn't gone over 10 points since week 1 with Jay Cutler. That was the only game Jay Cutler played a full game. Mm-hmm. We're in week 8 now. So the owner could just be willing to take anybody. You might even be able to get him less than Jeremy Hill, right? But I like trading Jeremy Hill because Jeremy Hill's part of that headache backfield in Cincinnati. You never know who's going to get the majority of the touches, and he just ate a terrible defense alive. And if you look at the footage from Jeremy Hill's long runs, I'm pretty sure any running back in the league could have ran through those holes.
Yeah.
On the long, he had like a 75-yard run.
Yeah.
I don't know what Cleveland was doing, but the whole field was just wide open. Like, he just had to follow one block, and then as soon as he ran through the line, like, there was open green ahead of him. I don't know where the defenders were, like if they even were fielding 11. It looked like they had like 7 or 8 defenders on the field.
There was one play, I think it's that one, where they were just playing like single high safety, and the safety came up to like plug a hole, and he just plugged the wrong hole, and then Jeremy Hill just like cut through the actual hole, and then there was no one there.
Yeah, it's just terrible.
But yeah, you could probably do even less. Like one I would do if they want 2 pieces, if they want like a running back and a wide receiver, I would do like Golden Tate coming off of a couple like better games, and like Jordan Howard, whose name is still worth something, even though he's kind of regressed. People probably are still like, but Jordan Howard.
Yeah, any type of running back will help certain teams, right, that are really running back needy. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, a Tate for Alshon package is definitely doable.
Yeah.
Go out and get Alshon. Feel the owner out. They might be willing to just unload Alshon for anybody.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're quite to that situation yet, but I mean, depending on their team, if they're losing and they need players that will produce, then they could be ready to just dump Alshon off, and you might be the benefactor there.
You might be. Let's move on to our next guy here.
Who is it?
It is going to be
Tell me.
Brandon Marshall of the New York Football Jets, not the Winnipeg Hockey Jets.
Brandon Marshall. Winnipeg Hockey Jets, the far superior team.
Yes. This is, he's coming off of a sort of slump in his production. But one of them was that just apocalyptic game against Arizona where the team couldn't do anything.
Oh, jeez. Yeah, that was awful. Prime time, too.
Prime time. That feels like kind of like an outlier. Like, the Jets aren't good, but they're not like Jaguars bad. I think that's a little bit of an outlier. And then, last week with mostly Geno and Fitzpatrick being told, hey, just run the ball, don't do anything. But now Geno, ACL is torn. We can pretend like the Geno era never happened. We're going right back to Fitzpatrick. And sort of a fun split to point at is Brandon Marshall with and without Ryan Fitzpatrick. Without, 13 points a game. With, 19 points a game. He's averaging basically, a touchdown production more with Ryan Fitzpatrick. The targets, everything just shoots way up. And the sort of key with it is the schedule. He gets Cleveland this week, which is just golden for everyone. I mean, we just saw AJ Green catch the most impressive not luck Hail Mary I've ever seen in my life.
That definitely made his stat line.
It did. Before that, it was
catch.
like, where are you, AJ Green? It's like, oh, here's like an 80-yard Hail Mary. Okay, cool. Now we're good.
Okay.
But even after that, he gets Cleveland this week, Miami the week after that, Rams the week after that. You like all of those matchups. And then playoffs, Niners, Dolphins. Patriots isn't great in week 16, but, that's all still mostly positive matchups. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he gets Indy in week 13, too. I mean, he'll probably get Vontae Davis in that game, but Indy doesn't have a good pass defense either. So there will still be opportunity there for him, especially if he gets peppered. And now you're dealing with the whole angry fit situation. He came out to the media and was
Angry
like,
Fitz.
They don't got my back. The GM doesn't support me. The coach doesn't support me. So, well, it's like, yeah, Fitz, if you looked at your numbers, they're terrible.
Yeah, for good reason they don't support you. You've been bad. I don't know who you think
like
you are.
Eating bottom of the list in every quarterback statistic there is outside of Brock Osweiler, who we might talk about later in the show. Brandon Marshall, I like it. He's coming off of a 3.9 point performance, and then before that it was 7 points. He's still an elite talent, and we haven't really seen the explosive week without Eric Decker. He had a good game against Pittsburgh a few weeks back where he went over 100 with a touchdown. But we're still waiting for Brandon Marshall to go nuclear because without Eric Decker, he's like the guy.
It's coming, and I think it's happening this week. I think is where we see the breakout really happen.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at his schedule too, he played Seattle, he played Arizona, he played. I mean, Baltimore. They're not great, but they're also not a bad defense either. They're actually pretty legitimate. Yeah. So he's had a tough run of it recently. But like you said, it gets juicy coming up. So go out and make an offer for Brandon Marshall. This is one of those where he has put up performances. It's not like Alshon Jeffery, who has he hasn't gone over like 10.1 points.
Yeah.
Brandon Marshall has had a few good weeks this season. He has the name to go along with it, so you might have to pay up for Brandon Marshall.
Yeah, he won't be cheap, but that's one where it's like you're not really buying low. Maybe you're buying slightly lower, but really you're just like paying at cost. He's someone that probably would have been hard to buy before in general, but now he's for sale off of a couple rough weeks, and so now's the time to hop on it.
I think, you can kind of just play up the whole narrative that the Jets are a dumpster fire because when the news broke that Decker was out for the year, everyone was on Brandon Marshall. Like, oh man, Brandon Marshall is just going to be spoon-fed the rest of the year. But now, 2 weeks with sub 8-point performances, it's the time where you could probably get Brandon Marshall for a discount.
Yes.
You're not going to get him at Alshon Jeffery price or Allen Robinson price, but you'll get him cheaper than you would have a few weeks back. So go out and get one Brandon Marshall. Who would you give up to get Brandon Marshall?
1 for 1, a running back. I'd be willing to go as high as like Carlos Hyde, like a low-end RB1, if I'm going to like pay a fair value for Marshall, which might be kind of tough because, he was hurt. Now he has the bye, so the owner's probably like, what do I want to deal with this? But you could point to the Saints matchup next week and be like, nah, he's going to be healthy. None of Hyde's backups did anything in his absence, so he'll be the guy again once he's back. So I'd go as high as that, or like maybe Frank Gore, who has like quietly been pretty good. Maybe his numbers are enough that a running back desperate team that only has Marshall is like, yeah, okay, let's do it. Somewhere in that range, the like high-end RB2, low-end RB1 if it's a 1 for 1.
Yeah. We're going to talk about a player in the sells section that I'll bring up with maybe like a package involving Brandon Marshall. But anyways, Brandon Marshall is number 2 on our list for the buys. Who is number 3, good sir?
Our third and final purchase is going to be DeAndre Hopkins.
Washington. Oh, wait.
Oh,
no? DeAndre Washington or?
No, Hopkins.
What? You're not trying to buy DeAndre Washington right now,
buy,
man?
you mean like pick up off the wire? The answer is still no.
Yeah. Hopkins dealing with the worst quarterback that has ever played the game, Brock Osweiler. Jeez, that Monday night game was so bad. And the Broncos fans, whoo, some of the signage that they were holding up was pretty brutal.
It was like the opposite of a revenge game. It was like an insult to injury game of like, we let you walk and we're gonna just like shit all over you. Like this, like it's
Yeah, that was just bad for Brock Osweiler. And the thing was, you can point to, yeah, Denver has an elite defense, which is going to kind of solidify the argument that DeAndre Hopkins is a nice buy low candidate because he has had some tough matchups. But there is an asterisk with this buy low. You really have to hope that they can figure something out with their offense because Brock looks lost.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't just that he was facing an elite defense. It was he was missing throws that, Cleveland quarterbacks could make. He was missing throws that were give me throws, and he was missing them badly. So something's going on there. It might have been the whole mental factor of being back in Denver. It's hard to say. The fact of the matter is they're going back home to play Detroit. Hopkins has been peppered with targets, 27 targets over the past 2 games. And you really started to see it in the Indianapolis game, and he had Vontae Davis covering him.
Yeah.
It's just a note. They were just throwing the ball to him every single play in that Indy game where he had 15 targets. So it's going to happen. The big games are going to happen. So I think DeAndre Hopkins, he's too good of a talent. Like, his body control is ridiculous. His routes are good. He's not a speed freak. He's not a burner type of wide receiver. But, I mean, he's too talented to be putting up these lines. And you point to Brock Osweiler, and yeah, he's been bad, but he should be good enough with the upcoming schedule that he can make DeAndre Hopkins relevant again. And the reason why we want to pump DeAndre Hopkins is his schedule softens up.
Yeah.
And with Brock Osweiler, the narrative around him, you can probably get DeAndre Hopkins pretty cheap right now. Because all you have to point out to is the quarterback situation. Like, dude, do you really want DeAndre Hopkins on your team? He has Brock Osweiler.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely one where it's risky. I'd want to buy low. I don't want to pay like an even price for Hopkins, regardless of the volume or any of that. But the sort of argument for him is you look at what he's done so far. He had a nice week 1 and 2 in good matchups, and then he got New England, who always scheme to take away the number 1 receiver, and then Tennessee, and so the dud there is worrisome. But then after that, it's Minnesota, Indy, Denver. Got Vontae and Indy. So those are 3 very tough matchups for a number 1 wide receiver. He kind of just came through the worst part of his schedule, so it's not surprising to see him struggle through it. And now it softens way up. Detroit this week, and then the bye. So you kind of hope that during the bye they figure out what's going on with Brock, why he forgot to throw a football, because he looks worse in the last few weeks than he has at any point last year. Even like the first couple weeks, he looked competent in the first couple weeks. I don't know what happened between then and now.
Yeah, and then Jacksonville coming out of the bye, Oakland, San Diego, Green Bay, Indianapolis, Jacksonville. I mean, that's a dream slate for a wide receiver.
Yeah.
I mean, he gets Indianapolis again, and they have a bad pass defense, but against the number 1 wide receiver, they are pretty tough because of Vontae. But Jacksonville, not very good. Oakland's been getting torched by wide receivers. San Diego doesn't have a great secondary.
Yeah.
Green Bay. I mean, just look at what Julio Jones did to San Diego. They didn't have an answer for him last week. And DeAndre Hopkins could be that type of wide receiver if he has a quarterback that can get him the ball. So, you're hoping that during the bye week, like you mentioned, that they can kind of sit down, figure out what's going on with their offense. Because if you look at their offense, they should actually be kind of a high-octane type of offense.
Yeah.
I mean, they have a decent offensive line. They have an elite-ish running back in Lamar Miller. And then they have DeAndre Hopkins and Will Fuller. So 2 competent wide receivers.
There's secondary talent there in the receiving game. Like, it's not Hopkins and then a bunch of trash. Like, he shouldn't be seeing all the coverage.
Yeah, I mean, he's got Fuller. He has, some other pieces. Jalen Strong, I guess, is a wide receiver 3.
Braxton
some other
Miller.
Pieces. Yeah, Braxton Miller, Jalen Strong. Scott Fedorowicz is his tight end.
Oh, we're gonna be talking about Fedorowicz in a little bit later. But yeah, no, I'm with you. He's definitely like a cheap. I mean, you just bought him, and tell us about the offer that you made that you somehow executed.
I did. I bought DeAndre Hopkins in one of our leagues in which I play with Leo in for Jerick McKinnon and John Brown. Now, this was a team that was super desperate at the running back position, so you kind of have to look up the makeup of the team you're trying to deal with. He needed running backs. I offered him Jerick McKinnon. He said no. Obviously he's not going to take 1-for-1 Jerick McKinnon for DeAndre Hopkins. So I kicked in John Brown, who I love, actually. I still like Smokey Brown, but, for the chance, John Brown wasn't getting any playing time on my team anyways. Jerick McKinnon was like my 4th or 5th running back.
Yeah.
So you trade those depth pieces for the chance that DeAndre Hopkins returns to form, especially with the schedule coming up. Obviously, I would give up even more than what I gave up to get DeAndre Hopkins. You're kind of in control of the narrative with DeAndre Hopkins right now because how bad their offenses looked. And frankly, Lamar Miller has really been the only competent piece in that offense. And, it's been bad. But
yeah, I like it. Go out and get them cheap. That'll be it for our buys.